9. Rescue from the flood. Norman, having seen his mother into hospital, rowed Mr. Barlow's boat to the village hall in search of Linda. She was not there. Quite horrified at not finding her, he set off again for his own house, accompanied by Henry, who had arrived with his family a short while before Norman did. They rowed down the street and met Linda paddling along on her upturned table, which was beginning to leak. "There's our kid," Norman shouted, waving an oar. Henry waved too. Linda gave him a cool flap of her hand. She still resented Norman leaving the house without her. "Come on, climb in," her brother ordered her, offering his hand, while Henry steadied the boat, which was bumping against the table. Linda scrambled aboard without thanking him. The table began to float away. "Wait!" Henry shouted, leaning out over the water. "There's my spider in it. There's Spid." "It's my spider," cried Linda. "It rescued me out of the attic. It spun a rope and let me down onto the table when you left me to drown." "It is my spider," Norman claimed hotly. "It has been in our shed for days. Don't start being funny about it belonging to you. How else do you think it got onto the table?" "I brought it," shrieked Linda. "It saved me. I told you it did." "Why? You hate spiders," jeered Norman. "You run a mile when you see one coming. I never heard anyone scream like you did when I showed you this fellow of mine in the shed last night." "You stole it from me," broke in Henry. "It belongs to our house. You ask your mother if it doesn't." "Where is Mum?" wailed Linda. "She'd tell you it's my spider if I say so. You see." "She'll tell you it's my spider," Henry interrupted. "Why, she knows I've had it for weeks till you pinched it." "I never pinched it," shouted Norman. "It came to help me," sobbed Linda. The table with Spid on it was rapidly parting company with the boat with the children in it, and was floating away down the flooded street. "Get it, quick!" shouted Henry, snatching the oars from Norman. Norman grabbed at them. Linda was caught in between and knocked off her feet. She lay howling on the planks. Still fighting for the oars, Henry managed to turn the boat round, but Norman turned it back again, and they twirled and spun in the middle of the flood water till the sound of a motorboat's engine stopped their battle for a brief moment, and a larger boat, manned by several neighbours, drew up alongside them. "Come on then, you're quite safe now," the man in charge hailed them. "Give us a little one. Don't cry, love. We'll have you back in the village hall in 2 shakes. They've got hot drinks in there, and we'll find your mum." "Mum's in hospital," Norman grunted. Linda set up a fresh howl. "Eh? What happened then?" said the rescuer, as kind hands reached over the gunwale and lifted Linda into the motorboat. "Come on, son, jump to it. We'll take the boat in tow," said the skipper. "Never mind about the table. We'll rescue all the furniture later on when we've got the people out. Hurry up, you two. Pass up the painter. We'll need all these boats from now on. No mucking about, please." Another hand reached over and seized the rope hanging in the bows of Mr. Barlow's boat. Ignominiously, the boys found themselves being towed back to the village hall, where Mr. Barlow quickly reclaimed his craft, and far away down the flooded street, Spid floated quietly out of sight. Chapter 10, with Auntie Bloss. The table came to rest in a small backwater, bumping quietly against a flight of brick steps. The ground was higher now. The street was climbing up a hill on the sides of which the houses stood high and dry. No sooner had it reached dry land than Spid scuttled down one of the legs, ran across the grass, and up the brick path to the nearest shelter he could find, which happened to be underneath the door of the house belonging to the grass and the brick path and the steps below. Peace and quiet, thought Spid. It isn't much to ask. Just a little peace and quiet. Nobody wants to be fought about and argued over. certainly not by tiresome children. Popular? Oh, yes, that's me. But on my own terms, thank you. And keeping my dignity, please. Being friends, yes, but not a pet to anybody. Oh, no. He was damp and cold, and not a little frightened by the flood water and the helplessness of feeling himself afloat and far away from Henry's house. Now he looked around for some warmth and comfort, and found it on the other side of the door. A small passage led into a kitchen, where there was a fire and a wool rug and some welcome dark corners. Also a budgerigar in a cage. Nobody else at all. "Hello," said the budgerigar. "Hello, birdie," said Spid, running underneath the rug. "Who are you talking to, boy?" said a voice. A lady came into the room. "I thought I heard you say hello quite nicely," she said to him. "Hello, birdie," said the budgerigar. "Oh, that's a new word," said his mistress admiringly. "I've never heard you say birdie before. Now, say hello, birdie, not that nasty hello, hello." "Hello, hello, hello, birdie," replied the budgerigar. "Oh, you are naughty," reproved his mistress, "just when I'm trying to teach you to talk like a little gentleman." "Hello, hello, hello," repeated the budgerigar, bouncing up and down and spilling its seed on the carpet. "Now look at that," said its mistress patiently. "Just when I've swept the room and made everything clean and tidy. Grandma's coming," she told him, putting her face close to the bars. "They phoned up from the village hall and she'd be here any minute. She'd tell you you are a naughty, untidy, common little bird. Why can't you say hello like the other budgies do?" "Hello, Grandma," cried the budgerigar joyously. His mistress stooped down to pick up the rug and shake the seeds out of it. Spid ran out from under the rug, and the lady gave a yell and dropped it. But before he could hide himself again, she had seized a glass from the dresser and clamped it down on top of him. All his little dashes landed up against the solid round sides of a glass prison. The lady slipped a sheet of paper underneath the glass and deposited it triumphantly on the table next to the budgerigar's cage. The little bird screamed in fright, but then began to laugh mockingly when he saw that Spid could not get out. "There," said his mistress. "Did you ever see such a big spider before, boy? I never did. We'll just wait till they bring Grandma from the village hall, and when she's had a peep at it, I'll take it down the steps and tip it back in the water. It won't upset her when she sees it can't get out." "Naughty, naughty, naughty," screamed the budgerigar. "You be quiet," said the lady. "I'm going to put on the kettle for a cup of tea. They'll be here in a minute. I hope she won't be too upset by the flood. We're lucky, boy, living in a higher part of the village." "Hello, hello, hello," said the budgerigar. It hopped into the bottom of its cage and pressed its stubby beak against the bars quite close to Spid, who did not know whether it wanted to be friendly or to bite him. "Hello, birdie," it said politely. "There," came its owner's voice. "I knew you could speak nicely if you tried. Good boy, clever bird. You say that to Grandma, and I dare say she'll give you some chocolate." "Hello, hello, hello," shrieked the budgerigar. It was attacking the door of its cage with its stubby beak, and while its mistress was getting out the teacups and putting on the kettle to make the tea, it walked out. Spid quailed a little as it waddled across the table towards him, but the moment it tipped the glass over the edge, he escaped and ran for the nearest shelter, which was the cage. The lady jumped round at the noise of the breaking glass, and the bird fled back the way it had come, while its mistress stood scolding it and bolting the door so that it could not get out again. Spid crouched under the drinking water container, wondering which was the best way to die: to be tossed into the river by an unfeeling lady, pecked to pieces by a savage bird. Either way, He was quite determined to fight to the end. The lady busied herself in sweeping up the pieces of broken glass, but the budgerigar spied out Spid in an instant. "Hello, hello," it said agreeably. "How are you, my dear?" "Quite well, thank you, Birdie," said Spid, still crouching. He did not quite trust the beak behind those green and golden feathers, though the little bird seemed friendly enough. "Happy days," said the budgerigar. "Thank you, Birdie," said Spid. The lady came over to stare at them in amazement. "Is that you talking, boy?" she asked. "No, lady, it's me, Spid lady," he replied. "Hello, lovey," chirped the bird. "Not hello, hello," Spid corrected him. "Hello, spider. Hello, dear," it pronounced primly. "Happy, happy, happy days, amen." "Now look," said Spid severely, "you can do better than that, my lad. If you don't do what your mistress tells you, I know somebody else who is going to take a swim in the river." "Ow," said the bird, looking abashed. "Leave him to me, lady," said Spid. "I'll have him talking properly in no time. Do you want him in English or in French?" "Oh, English, please," said the lady, looking startled. The doorbell rang, and within seconds the room was filled from the back by 2 ambulance men and a grandma. "We brought the ambulance down the upper road," one of the men explained, "but the water is going down. There you are, Gran. You'll be all right now. You're with your daughter. Nice cup of tea and a warm by the fire, and you'll be back again in your own home by bedtime. So long, love." The men went out, and Grandma sat down in a chair by the fire and panted. "3 cups of tea I had at the hall," she said, "and each one nastier than the last. I don't think they've ever heard of a tea bag. And they ran out of sugar before I got there." "Thanks, dear. I'll take another lump. Where's Dick?" "Oh, he's helping with the flood," her daughter said, "getting people's furniture out and all that. Did the water come inside the house then, Mum?" "Well, no," Grandma admitted, "but the socials thought it might, so they came and got me out. My house stands a lot lower than yours. I don't know what I'd do if the water does get in. I've only just had the kitchen done out, and the front garden is ever so nice. I don't like to think of my geraniums all floating round in their pots. You've still got that silly bird then?" "Hello, Grandma," said the budgerigar politely. "Oh, that's quite nice," said Grandma. "You've been teaching it to speak properly, have you, Bloss?" "Well," she hesitated, but before she could reply, Grandma had caught sight of Spid trying to leave the cage through the bars. She gave an enormous gasp and fainted away. Spid, now clear of the cage, ran to the tap to damp a tissue, which she dragged to Grandma's face, tenderly mopping her forehead, while our daughter held a cup of tea to her lips. Slowly, Grandma opened her eyes. "Aye!" she shrieked on seeing Spid's round, anxious eyes peering into hers, and she fainted again. "Oh, do go away," Bloss begged him. "I'm sure you mean well, but it won't do. Grandma can't bear the sight of spiders. You see what it does to her. Just go away and hide yourself, and don't come back any more." "I only wanted to be friends," Spid murmured. He crept away very crestfallen, looking for a dark corner to hide himself in. But just then he heard the budgerigar rasping its bill along the bars of its cage. It was inviting him to come back. And because he felt lonely and his feelings were rather hurt, Spid went. The bird made room for him on its perch. "Hello, Spider," it announced. Spid's heart felt warm and comforted. They cuddled up together, and nobody could see Spid for the bright breast feathers of the bird. "How you can have great spiders like that running about in the house, I can't imagine," Grandma was whimpering, quite overcome by all the events of the morning. "Oh, I don't, Mum dear," her daughter was soothing her. "I think it must have come up the path out of the flood. And it isn't an ordinary spider, Mum. He's ever such a funny one. It is teaching Boy to speak properly. You know how rough he has been. Well, you ought to listen to him now. Inside the cage, the bird and Spid were conversing quietly together. Not "how are ya?" Spid was repeating. It doesn't sound nice. You should say, "How do you do?" "How do," said the budgerigar. "How do you do?" repeated Spid patiently. "Cock-a-doodle-doo," giggled the budgerigar. "Hee, noisy boysy, silly old spider sat beside her. Ah. "Say, how do you do?" Grandma repeated Spid. "How do you do? Fine," cackled the bird. "Very well, I'm leaving you," said Spid. But the bird began to shriek at the top of its voice. Don't go, stay with Boy, I love you, please don't go." "I love you," repeated Spid gently. There was a pause. Then, "Please don't go, Spider. I love you," said the bird in an altered voice. "There," said Bloss in triumph. "Did you ever hear anything like it?" "Well, no, I never did," said Grandma, staring. "Where did you come from, Daddy Longlegs?" "My name is Spid, lady," he said courteously. "I came down the flood on an upside-down table that floated. I belong to Henry Pratt." "To Henry Pratt?" exclaimed Grandma and Bloss together. "Did you say to Henry Pratt?" "Yes, ma'am. Yes, lady," replied the spider. "But Henry is my grandson." "But Henry is my nephew," both ladies exclaimed together. "Yes, ladies," Spid agreed. "Henry told me that his grandma fainted when she saw a spider, and that his Auntie Bloss shut them up in tooth glasses." "I really am very sorry," said Auntie Bloss. "If anyone had told me," muttered Grandma. Naughty, shrieked the budgerigar. "Be quiet," commanded Spid. The little bird turned its back and tucked its head underneath its wing, muttering something rude. The telephone bell rang and Auntie Bloss went to answer it. "It's Henry's dad," she announced on her return. "He wants to know if we are all right." "You're doing fine," croaked the budgerigar. "I beg your pardon," said Spid. "You are doing fine, dear," peeped the bird, ending up with a cackle. "You are very rude," said Spid, "and I'm leaving." "Oh, sorry all, cried the bird in great agitation. Oh, beg your pardon." Auntie Bloss got up and put a duster over the cage, but Spid was quicker still. Before the budgerigar could get back on its perch, he had tied up its bill with such a strong cobweb that it was not able to say another word for several hours. Chapter 11, After the Flood. Spid was awakened by the sound of heavy footsteps. Both ladies began talking at once to a man whom Spid recognised at once as Henry Pratt's father. "You don't know what we've got here, John," Auntie Bloss said to him, taking the cloth off the budgerigar's cage. "What? That nutty bird," he exclaimed. "I've seen that before. Does it talk yet?" The bird muttered something incoherent through the web that bound his bill, and Spid took the opportunity of making a dash for freedom. He ran out of the cage and down the fall of the tablecloth, but not before Mr. Pratt had noticed him. "Look out, there's a spider," he cried, making a lunge at Spid with his foot. No, you mustn't," shrieked Auntie Bloss. "It isn't just any spider, it's Henry's spider. It came down with the flood." "Good heavens," said Mr. Pratt. "That one. Henry has been raising heaven and earth for the past few days since he lost it. He blames me, I may tell you. He thinks I squashed it, if you please, and he won't believe a word I say about it. Well, in that case, I suppose I'd better take it home with me." This time, it was not a tooth glass that Auntie Bloss popped on top of Spid, but a teacup. And a minute later, he was transferred by Mr. Pratt's large red hands into Mr. Pratt's large dark pocket, together with a handkerchief, a box of matches, and a number of coins pressed down on top of him. The stuffiness of the pocket and the mixed smells of tobacco and motor oil became as much as he could bear. He thought he really would soon die of a very unpleasant kind of suffocation before he could ever see Henry again. As Mr. Pratt left Auntie Bloss's house to go home, and fortunately for Spid, he suddenly gave a gigantic sneeze and put his hand in his pocket to find his handkerchief. As he pulled it out, Spid came too. He dropped onto the pavement and ran to hide himself in a crack among the paving stones, where he crouched until Mr. Pratt had walked out of sight. Much later in the evening, he found himself once more outside Henry's garden gate. But of Henry there was not a sign to be seen. Everything was wet and uncomfortable and unpleasant after the flood, and there was no welcome anywhere for Spid. He hung around cold and wretched till someone opened a window, leaving a few inches open at the top. Spid climbed up and let himself down inside on a long thread that would have disgusted Mrs. Gridley. Nobody was around in the cold bedroom, but downstairs the familiar warmth and comfort of the kitchen came out to meet him. He scuttled down the stairs and under the kitchen door to find the family sitting at tea. Henry's father was explaining how sure he was that Henry's spider was in his pocket till it had escaped halfway home, and Henry, very sober, was trying to reconcile himself to the fact that he had very nearly had a spider again, but not quite, while Mrs. Pratt was making comforting noises to them both and assuring them that sooner or later Spid was simply bound to turn up again. "He won't," said Henry. "Oh, he will," said Henry's mother. Henry's father said nothing. Spid climbed up the back of Henry's chair, walked onto his shoulder, and crept round his neck. "Ugh!" said Henry, scratching. "Henry, it's there, your spider!" cried his mother excitedly. "Well, I'm blowed," said his father. "I don't believe it ever left my pocket after all, the cunning fellow. I expect he had a good strong thread to climb back with, so I never knew." "Don't tell Mrs. Gridley, or she'll tell Norman," Henry pleaded. "He'll steal it if he can, and so will that Linda. Mrs. Gridley knows Spid is mine anyway." "I'm not anybody's. I'm me," Spid was muttering to himself on Henry's knee. "Friends, yes? Best friends, if you like. Lots of friends, and 8 handshakes all round. But spiders are free people. They don't belong to anybody. Besides, they laughed at me once," Spid reminded himself, when he had got used to feeling warm and wanted again. "I shall stay here just as long as I want to, and as long as they are good to me. Henry is nice, his mother is nice, his grandpa is quite nice, his father is not very nice, his Auntie Bloss is fairly nice, his grandma is only a bit nice, his father is horrid. He'd like to squash me if it wasn't for Henry, I know he would. I shall pay him out," Spid said to himself. "He's lucky to have a spider like me about the place, and not a budgerigar like that silly little bird of Auntie Bloss's. Tonight, when he's asleep, I'll take my big revenge," thought Spid, becoming more and more fierce and determined as he ruminated. Spid slept in Henry's room, but it was easy enough for a spider to slip in and out under the crack. When everyone in the household had gone to bed, he marched out purposefully into the corridor. Mr. Pratt liked to leave his clothes in the bathroom, all ready to put on in the morning. Spid spent a considerable time weaving threads round the trouser legs and the sleeves, so that without a pair of scissors, nobody could possibly get into them. All the time he spun, he muttered, "Spoiling my night's rest, just because I've 8 legs, and pretty good ones too." He was creating such an undercurrent to his toil that at first he did not notice a creak on the stairs, following a very slight tinkle down below, as if someone were opening the silver drawer. When he did notice it, Spid stopped grumbling and went to the bathroom door. All was quiet in the bedrooms. Henry slept. His father slept. His mother slept. There was not a movement, not even a snore. But down below, something or someone was moving about, and very, very quietly coming up the stairs. Spid crept onto the landing and saw a completely unknown figure making his way upwards with socks over his shoes, gloves on his hands, and a cap pulled down over his face. I don't think he's very nice, thought Spid. I don't think he's nice at all. I think he's going to steal Mrs. Pratt's jewellery and Mr. Pratt's cufflinks and put them in that bag I can see down there in the hall. I can't allow that, said Spid, dashing to the top of the stairs. The burglar was still only part of the way up. As quietly as possible, Spid spun a thread across 4 steps from the top and another on the very top stair. But the second thread was not necessary, because the burglar caught his foot in the first, tripped, fell, swore, and clattered backwards down the stairs to lie breathless on his back in the hall. Quick as a flash, Spid was after him. Before the man could struggle to his feet, he was bound from head to foot in strong cobwebs. By the time Mr. Pratt had arrived on the scene, there was nothing left for him to do but call the police and hand over the criminal to the law, caught completely red-handed and secured a great deal more firmly than by any handcuffs. "Spider," said Mr. Pratt when they were all sitting round the kitchen fire and drinking cocoa before going back to bed. "Spider, I take off my hat to you. Shake hands, old pal, shake hands." "Spid's the name, sir," Spid said warmly. He shook Mr. Pratt's hand with every one of his 8 legs. "Beautiful," said Henry's mother with tears in her eyes. "And I'll tell you one thing, Mr. Spid," said Henry's father. "I swear that for your sake, I'll never, never, never tread on another spider in my life, okay?" "Just as you say, sir," said Spid modestly. Henry would have been utterly happy if it hadn't been for Norman. He felt certain that sooner or later his rival would make an attempt to get the spider back again, and when he did, he would not be likely to let it go. Before going back to sleep, Spid went into the bathroom and unpicked all the spider threads in Mr. Pratt's trousers and sleeves of his jacket and shirt. It took him half the night, and he was deadly tired, but he felt it was the moment to let bygones be bygones. And that's where we're leaving it for today.